How to Dress Well, I Am Toward You album review. Let's chat about it. Hey friends, what's going on? John here from What's Spinning, here tonight to chat about this latest album from How to Dress Well, aka Colorado-based singer-songwriter Mr. Tom Krell. And he's been at it for quite some time, and in his early days he was a project that I was very excited to hear more of. Around the time that he put out his debut album, What Remains, I was just kind of getting into the freakier and weirder side of R&B, and that's what this album was. The lo-fi production, the tortured sounding backdrop, and Tom's very lovesick vocal stringing it all together. It wasn't perfect, and at times it was a little ugly, but at the very least I was very excited to hear more from this project. It seemed like the bar was so high, but ever since I feel like I've just had so many mixed feelings when it comes to Tom's music. His follow-up, Total Loss, I mean, on one hand, the production was a lot cleaner and just sounded a lot better. The song structures, the hooks were really impressive as well, and Tom just sounded very confident with where he was at, and I really appreciated it. It was a solid set of tunes. My only problem was when things got off track just a little bit. This album went downhill really fast, and his follow-up to that, What Is This Heart, I had even more mixed feelings on, as the 7 or 8 tracks that took up the center of this album were some of Tom's most tortured and dark and, dare I say, revealing tracks to date, and his vocals were divine. They were just bookended by some of the worst tracks that Tom has ever put to tape, and if that wasn't enough, ever since things have even gotten more confusing when it comes to me and my relationship with Tom's music. His Care album, I mean, what else can I possibly say about this thing? It sucks. I mean, yeah, the poppy beats actually don't sound too bad, and the production's great, but Tom just sounded awkward as hell on these things. And the Anteroom, Tom's last work that he left us with, I had, once again, very mixed feelings on. On one hand, my god, the very tortured and genuinely experimental vibes to this album led to Tom's freakiest song structures to date. I respect that, but man, when this album was boring, and it was a great deal of the time, this was some of Tom's worst music to date. Bar none. It just was not up to snuff. And leading up to this thing, I said, maybe this time, it'll be a little bit more consistent. But leading up to this thing, I was just hoping to God that this time around, things would be maybe a little bit more consistent. But hearing these singles, it's kind of going to be more of the same, isn't it? I mean, I will say this, when Tom focuses, and he does often here, he makes genuine magic. Like New Confusion, all around, absolutely stunned by this as an intro. The backdrop here, the pristine production, the sort of art pop vibes, this is beautiful. I love how bubbly yet tortured of an R&B tune this is. I mean, yeah, it's got some harsh, noisy moments, but it's also got a ton of sincerity behind it as well. It's equally as glitchy as it is really stunningly beautiful. For me, this seems like almost like a rebirth for Tom. This seems like a fresh start. And honestly, hearing this as a single, it got my hopes up. We also have Contingency, Necessity. It's one that did take a little while to grow on me. It's one of the more subtle tunes here. And listen, this is in every way Tom cranking up the weirdness. This is his most experimental album to date, even more than the Anteroom. And it is a shifting, constantly morphing art pop tune that just is kind of only really strung together by Tom's vocals. And honestly, they're really memorable. This track is haunting and beautiful, but it's also revealing and sincere, much like some of my favorite work from Tom. Not only that, but this constantly shifting, changing, experimental beat really is very engaging. And yeah, it's far from Tom's most tuneful work, but it is an experience. I do really like Crypt Sustain as well. It honestly brings me back to his debut album from many years ago, outside of those wailing guitars. That's a new thing. And at first it was something that I had to kind of warm up to, but this track does have a serious pomp and circumstance to it. It's warped, but it's also really triumphant. And Tom's vocal work on this track, some of his most intimate since his work on What Is This Heart. But between the noisy guitars and Tom's vocal effects, it brings it together very nicely. So like I said, when Tom really focuses on the How to Dress Well sound, he really does create magic. No Light is also one of the most instantaneous tracks I've heard from Tom in years. And listen, the heavy use of vocal effects, it's going to be a lot for some to take in. There's not really a pure vocal on this track. But it's something that I can personally look past, especially with how triumphant this track comes off. It's overall one of the best sounding tracks here. But before long, let me tell you, How to Dress Well, Tom Krell really does get into some bad habits. Like Nothing Prayer, for example. What the hell is this? This follows a string of gloriously textured, genuinely adventurous tunes that show Tom Krell getting a little engaging again. And then this comes along, and it is just so boring. This is just 4 minutes that goes nowhere. We are talking about detours down a road that goes nowhere. And Tom just does not sound invested in this either, whether it be vocally or lyrically. I mean, yeah, the strummed riff that we get in the closing moments is actually pretty cool, but outside of that, this track is a major miss. And on it and around it just sounds like scraps and leftovers. But it doesn't come off as exciting or adventurous as other cuts here. This just comes off as scatterbrained. I just feel like I've been here 100 times, and in nearly 5 minutes, I can't tell you the first thing about this track. And by the end of it, it's so annoying and boring, I honestly almost didn't want to continue listening to this thing. Gas Station Against Blackened Hillside, I mean, this track is just so frustrating because I feel like all the pieces are here. I mean, the backdrop, the atmosphere, the production. Stunning. It has that drama as well, but then Tom comes in and just lets all the air out of this balloon. His performance here, one of his least engaged and heartfelt on this entire record. I just feel like all the pieces are here, and Tom is not really, clinging on to the potential that he has. A lot of the same feelings on The Only True Joy on Earth. Instrumental-wise, atmosphere-wise, once again, really compelling stuff. But why do I get the feeling that this was an afterthought? Why do I get the feeling listening to this that Tom had an instrumental plan for another track, it didn't come to fruition, and he just recorded some vocals hastily? The bass is here, but it's got no substance. This album is just another very frustrating one from How to Dress Well, and it gets even more frustrating with, some of the better tracks in the later half. Like Song in the Middle, for example. This track has some really cool elements to it. I love the sort of lo-fi production that we get here, and Tom's return to the sort of analog recordings that he was doing in his early days. It has that really adventurous feel to it once again, and I haven't felt that in a while, but I get it here. The way the track's beat just works its way in, really genuinely creative. It's one of the freakiest and weirdest tracks here, but it does come off as really exciting, and when this track does open up, it comes off as almost psychedelic and kaleidoscopic at points, really sunny and bright. It's one of my favorite deep cuts here, and A Faint Glow in the Window of Thin Bone is also really good. Honestly, it reminds me a lot of the work that I would have enjoyed from Tom in his early days. The strings are just so lush and so good sounding. And we get on top of that a very quiet, very hushed atmosphere and some very personal, revealing lyrics from Tom. It's really solid stuff. Once again, also in the final moments, Tom goes back to that sort of sound collage sound that he was working with in the early days. It's a really great tune. And A Secret Within the Voice as a finale is one of the most unique and adventurous tracks here. That strummed riff, honestly, it's one of the most meditative things I've heard on this record. Not only that, but this track puts a lot of emphasis on Tom's vocals, which it should always be doing. The sound play, the ideas, creativity goes, watch that. The sound play, the ideas, the experimentation. As far as creativity goes, this is one of Tom's strongest moments here. It's got a sense of mystery to it that I also get really caught up in. It's a great finale that reminds you of what How to Dress Well can do. I mean, God, this is just such a frustrating album, once again, from Tom Krell. The foundation is here. The ideas are here. But I still really feel like Tom just is not reaching that full potential, because God, some of the elements here are great, and some of the tracks here are stunning, but consistency-wise, once again, it's not his strong suit, and once again, I'm just kind of middle of the road on this album. There's a lot of great material, there's a lot of really freaking boring material. I'm just kind of middle of the road on this. I'm feeling a strong 6 on this album, but let me know what you all think down below. If you liked the video, be sure to give us a like, give us a subscribe, and let me know down below what you would like for me to chat about in the future. And until next time, have a great day, friends.